All right, so we read the last half of 4 yesterday, and the doctor had given her the packet of pills to take um, because she said that if she didn't take them, um, that basically the people in the camp were going to kill her. So, up to this point, this has kind of been our exposition. We're learning about the characters, the setting, all of that good stuff. So 5 is when things start to pick up, and we start our rising action. So chapter 5. I didn't remember falling asleep, only waking. Of course I did. My body was shaking so hard that I rolled right off the bed and hit my face against the next bunk over. Vanessa must have jumped out of her skin with sudden bang and the movement of her bed because I heard her say, "What the hell? Ruby, is that you?" I couldn't get up. I felt her hands on my face and registered that she was now screaming my name, not whispering it. "Oh my God," someone said. It sounded like Sam, but I couldn't open my eyes. "Emergency button." Ashley's weight settled over my legs. I knew it was her, even though my brain came in and out of consciousness, and a white-hot light was burning behind my eyelids. Someone shoved something into my mouth, rubber and hard. I could taste blood, but I wasn't sure if it had come from my tongue or my lips, or 2 pairs of hands lifted me off the ground, dropping me onto some other surface. I still couldn't open my eyes. My chest was on fire. I couldn't stop shaking, and my limbs felt like they were caving in on themselves. And then I smelled rosemary. I felt soft, cool hands pressing against my chest. Then nothing at all. Life came back to me in the form of a hard slap across the face. "Ruby," someone said. "Come on, I know you can hear me. You have to wake up." I cracked my eyes open, trying not to cringe as the light flooded in. A door opened and creaked shut somewhere else. "Is that her?" a new voice asked. "Are you going to sedate her?" "No, not this one," the first voice returned. I knew that voice. It was as sweet as it had been before, only this time it had a sharper edge. Dr. Begbie's hands came up beneath my arms and propped me up. "She's tough. She can handle it." Something smelled horrible, acidic and rotten all at once. My eyes flew open. Dr. Begbie was kneeling beside me, waving something beneath my nose. "What?" The other voice I had heard belonged to a young woman. Thank you. Dark brown. She had dark brown hair and pale skin. And that was all that was remarkable about her. Not realizing I was watching her, she stripped off her blue scrubs and threw them at Dr. Begbie. I didn't know where we were. The room was small, filled with shelves of bottles and boxes. I couldn't smell anything besides whatever it was Dr. Begbie had used to wake me. "Put these on," Dr. Begbie said, pulling me to my feet, whether my legs were ready or not. "Come on, Ruby, we've got to hurry." My body felt heavy, cracking at all of my joints. But I did as I was told and pulled the scrubs over my uniform. While I was dressing, the other woman put her hands behind her back and waited, as Dr. Begbie wrapped them together with thick silver duct tape. That finished, the doctor moved to tying the other woman's feet together. "You're meeting them in Harvey. Make sure you take route 215. I know, Dr. Begbie said as she chewed off another piece of duct tape and placed it over the woman's mouth. "Good luck." "What are you doing?" I asked. My throat was scratchy, and the skin around my mouth seemed to crack as I spoke. The doctor pulled my hair back, twisting it up into a messy bun that she secured with a rubber band. The other woman watched as her ID tags were dropped over my neck, and Dr. Begbie put a surgical mask over my face. "I'll explain everything once we're out, but we can't waste time. They'll be doing rounds in 20 minutes, she said. You can't say anything, understand? Play along." I nodded and let her push me outside of the dark room and into a dimmed hallway of the infirmary. Once again, my legs seemed to be failing me, but the doctor took it all in stride. She looped one of my arms over her shoulder and supported most of my weight. "We're moving," she muttered. "Return the cameras to their normal feeds." I looked over, but she wasn't talking to me. She was whispering into her gold swan pin. "Not a word," she reminded me as we turned down another long hallway. We were moving so fast that we rustled the white curtains of the examination stalls as we passed them. The PSFs were black blurs as they stepped out of our way. Sorry, Dr. Begbie called after this. I've got to get this one home. I kept my eyes on the straight lines of tile passing under my feet. My head was still spinning so badly that I didn't realize we were heading outside until I heard the beep of the doctor's card passing through the lock swipe and felt the first drops of cool rain hit my scalp. They kept the camp's enormous stadium lights on at all hours of the night. The lights stood out like giants across the camp, but all they reminded me of were the night football games, the smell of fresh cut grass, and the back of my dad's red Spartan sweater as he yelled for his old high school teams to run some damn offense at the top of his lungs. It was a short walk and stumble from the back of the infirmary to the pebbled parking lot. I actually wasn't sure if I was hallucinating or not. My sight went in and out of focus, but it was impossible to miss the sound of crunching gravel as the voice yelled, "Everything okay over there?" I felt, rather than saw, Dr. Begbie tense. I tried to keep moving, to use her shoulder to prop myself up, but my legs just weren't working anymore. When I opened my eyes again, I was sitting up, staring at the standard issue boots of a PSF soldier. He knelt down in front of me. Dr. Begbie was saying something to him, her voice as calm as the first time I had spoken to her. So sick. I offered to drive her home. I put the mask on her to make sure she didn't have give the bug to anyone else. The soldier's voice came clearer. I hate that we always get sick from the kids. Would you mind helping me walk her over to my Jeep? Dr. Begbie asked. If she's sick. It'll just take a minute, the doctor interrupted, and I promise that if you have so much as even the sniffles tomorrow, I'll nurse you back to health myself. That was the voice I recognized, so sweet that it sounded like little bells. The soldier chuckled, but I felt him lift me up all the same. I tried not to lean against him, to grit my teeth against the jarring motion, but I couldn't barely keep my head from rolling back. Front seat? He asked. Dr. Begbie was about to respond when the PSF's radio crackled. Control has you on camera. Do you need assistance? He waited until Dr. Begbie had opened the front passenger side door, and he set me down on the seat before replying. Everything clear. He looked at the tags in my hand, lifting it off my chest. Dr. Rogers has the virus that's been going around. Dr. Begbie, came the quick reply. She slid into the driver's seat and slammed the door behind her. I glanced over, watching as she fumbled to get the key in the ignition. It was the first time I'd noticed her hand shaking. Dr. Begbie is driving her home for the night. Dr. Rogers' car will be here overnight. Please inform the morning guards when they do their tally. Roger that. Tell them to head straight for the gate. I'll notify the watch patrol to wave them through. The Jeep sputtered to life in a series of grinding protests. I looked through the windshield to the electric fence and the dark, familiar forest behind it. Dr. Begbie reached over to fasten my seatbelt. Man, she's out of it. The PSF was back, leaning against Begbie's window. I did give her some pretty strong stuff. Dr. Begbie laughed. I felt my chest clench. So about tomorrow. Come by and say hello, okay? Dr. Begbie said. I have a break around 3. She didn't give him a chance to reply. The tires spun against the gravel and the windshield wiper squeaked to life. Dr. Begbie rolled up her window with a friendly wave, using her other hand to steer the car back and pull out of the parking space. The little green numbers on the dashboard read 2:45 a.m. Try to cover your face as much as possible, she muttered before flicking on the radio. I didn't realize the song, but I recognized David Gilmour's voice and the ebb and flow of Pink Floyd synthesizers. She turned the volume down, taking a deep breath as she turned out of the lot. Her fingers tapped out a nervous rhythm on the steering wheel. Come on, she whispered, glancing down at the clock again. There was a line of 2 cars in front of us, each way forward with agonizing slowness. I thought she was going to crawl out of her skin by the time the last car pulled forward into the night. Dr. Begbie hit the gas too hard and the Jeep lurched forward. The seatbelt snapped into a locked position when she slammed onto the brakes, knocking the air out of my chest. She rolled the windows down, but I was too tired to be afraid. I pressed my hand over my eyes and sucked in a deep breath. The surgical mask brushed against my lips. I'm taking Dr. Rogers home. Let me just get her passes. It's fine. I have you on schedule for tomorrow at 3 p.m. Is that correct? Yes, thank you. Please indicate Dr. Rogers will not be in. Understood. I was too tired to try to control my brain's wandering fingers. When Dr. Begbie touched me again, brushing the hair out of my face, an image bloomed to life behind my eyes. A dark-haired man, smiling broadly with his arms around Dr. Begbie, spinning her, and spinning her, until I could hear her delighted laughter in my ears. Kate cracked our windows, and the air rushing by, brought in the scent of rain and carried me quickly into sleep. Chapter 6. It was still dark out when I opened my eyes. The AC blew through the vents, batting at the little yellow cardboard tree hanging down from the rearview mirror. Its vanilla fragrance was sickeningly sweet, and so overwhelming that it turned my empty stomach. Mick Jagger crooned next to my ear, singing about war and peace and shelter, those kinds of lies. I tried to turn my face away from whatever song was escaping from, but I only managed to smack my nose against the window and strain my neck. I sat straight up and almost hanged myself on the gray seatbelt. We weren't in the Jeep anymore. The night came back like a deep breath, complete and overwhelming all at once. The glow of the green dashboard lit the scrubs that I wore, and that was enough to flood my mind with the reality of what had happened. Smears of trees and undergrowth lined the road, and it was completely dark save for the small car's weak yellow headlights. For the first time in years, I could see the stars that Thurman's monstrous light had faded into non-existence. They were so bright, so clear, that they couldn't have been real. I didn't know what was more shocking, the endless stretch of road or the sky. Tears pricked at the backs of my eyes. "Don't forget to breathe, Ruby," came a voice beside me. I pulled the surgical mask down from over my mouth as I looked over at Dr. Begbie's blonde hair. Dr. Begbie's blonde hair was around her face, sweeping up against her shoulders. And the time it had taken us to get from Thurmond to wherever we were, she had stripped off her scrubs and changed into a black t-shirt and jeans. The night stained the skin under her eyes like bruises. I hadn't noticed the sharp angles that made up her chin and nose. "You haven't been in a car in some time, huh?" She laughed, but she was right. I was more aware of the forward lurch of the car than I was of my own heartbeat. "Dr. Begbie," "Call me Kate," she interrupted, a bit harsher than before. I don't know if I reacted to the abrupt change of tone or not, but she immediately followed with, "I'm sorry, it's been a very long night. I could use a cup of coffee." According to the dashboard, it was 4:30 a.m. I had only had 2 hours of sleep, but I felt more alert than I had all day, all week, all of my life. Kate waited until the Rolling Stones had finished their song before turning down the radio. All they play are oldies now. I thought it was a joke at first, or something Washington wanted, but apparently it's all that gets requested these days. She snuck a look at me out of the corner of her eye. I can't imagine why. "Dr. Kate," I said, even my voice was stronger. "Where are we? What's going on?" Before she could answer, there was a cough from the back seat. I twisted around despite the pain in my neck and chest. Curled up in a protective little ball was another kid, about my age, or maybe a year younger. That other kid, Max, Matthew, whatever, from the infirmary, and he was looking far better than I felt as he slept on. "We just left Harvey, West Virginia," Kate said. "That's where we met."
I didn't like that.
Why are normal bells not okay? I can't. Oh my goodness. "That's where we met with some friends that helped me switch cars and remove Martin back there from the medical trunk that we had to smuggle him out in." "Wait. Oh, don't worry," Kate said quickly. "We made sure it had air holes." Like that was my biggest concern. "They just let you take it out to the car?" I asked, "without even checking it?" She glanced at me again, and I was proud of the look of surprise there. The doctors at Thurman use those trunks to transport medical waste. The camp controller started forcing the doctors to dump the waste themselves when the budget got cut. Sarah and I had duty for this week. "Sarah," I interrupted. "Dr. Rogers?" She hesitated a split second before nodding. "Why did you tie her up? Why are you helping us?" She answered my question with one of her own. "Have you ever heard of the Children's League?" "Bits and pieces," I said, "and only in whispers. If the rumors were true, they were an anti-government group. They were the ones the younger kids, the later arrivals at Thurmond, claimed that were trying to take down the camp system. The ones that supposedly hid kids so they couldn't be taken. I had always assumed that they were our generation's version of a fairy tale. Nothing good could ever be true. Or nothing that good could ever be true. We, Kate said, letting the words sink in before continuing, are an organization dedicated to helping children affected by the government's new laws. John Alvin, have you heard of him? He was formerly an intelligence advisor to Gray. He started the Children's League. She nodded. After his daughter died and he realized what was going to happen to the kids who survived, he left D.C. and tried to expose all of the testing that was happening at the camps. The New York Times, the Post, you name it, none of them would run the story, because by then things were bad enough that Gary had them under his thumb for national security reasons, and the smaller papers folded along with the economy. So I was trying to wrap my mind around this, wondering if I had misheard her. So he created the Children's League to help us? Kate's face lit up with a smile. Yes, that's exactly right. Then why did you help only me? The question sprang up like a lone weed, ugly and deeply rooted. I rubbed a hand over my face, trying to clear the rumblings from my brain, but I couldn't tear it out. There was a strange feeling arising from my chest that followed, like something heavy was trying to work its way up from my center. It might have been a scream. What about the others? I didn't recognize my own voice. The others? You mean the other children? Kate's eyes were only focused on the road in front of us. They can wait. Their situation wasn't as pressing as yours. When the time is right, I'm sure we'll go back for them. But in the meantime, don't worry, they'll live. I recoiled almost instantly at her tone more than her words. The way that she said they'll live was so dismissive. I half expected it to see a hand come up in the air and wave me off. Don't worry. Don't worry at the way that they've been mistreated. Don't worry about their punishments. Don't worry about the guns constantly trained on their backs. God, I wanted to throw up. I had left them behind, all of them. I had left Sam, even after I'd promised we'd get out together. After everything she had done to protect me, I had just left her there. Oh no, Ruby, I'm sorry. I didn't even realize how that would sound, she said, turning back and forth between me and the road. I just meant, I don't even know what I'm saying. I was there for weeks, and I still can't begin to imagine what it must have been like. I shouldn't act like I know what you went through. I just left them, I told her. And it didn't matter that my voice was breaking or that my hands had come up to clutch my elbows to keep from grabbing her. Why did you only take me? Why couldn't you save the others? Why? I've told you before, she said softly. It had to be you. They would have killed you otherwise. The others aren't in danger. They're always in danger, I said, and wondered if she had stepped... Please bear with us for just a few minutes. I don't like the sound of that. I lost my place. They're always in danger, I said, and I wondered if she had ever stepped a single foot beyond the infirmary. How could she not have seen? How could she not have heard it, felt it, breathed it in? The air at Thurman was so coated in fear that you could taste it, like vomit in the back of your throat. It had taken me less than a day in that place to see the hatred and terror come in circles, and that they fed off of each other. The PSFs hated us, and they had to make us fear them, and we feared them, which only made us hate them even more. There was an unspoken understanding that we were at Thurman because of each other. Without the PSFs, there would be no camp, but without the Psi Freaks, there would be no need for PSFs. And whose fault was it? Everyone's? No one's? Ours? You should have just left me. You should have taken someone else. Someone who is better. They'll just be punished because of this. I know it. They'll hurt them, and it's my fault for going, for leaving them behind. I knew I wasn't making sense, but I couldn't seem to connect my thoughts to my tongue. The feeling, the heart-swallowing guilt, the sadness that took hold and never let itself be shaken free. How do you tell someone that? How do you put that into words? Kate's lips parted, but no sound came out for several moments. She took a firm hold of the wheel and guided the car over to the side of the road. Her foot came off the gas, and she allowed the car to roll to a hesitant stop. When the wheels finally ceased spinning, I reached for the door handle, a spike of total and complete grief cutting through me. "What are you doing?" Kate asked. She had pulled over because she wanted me to get out, hadn't she? I would have done the same thing if our situations had been flipped. I understood. I leaned back away from her arm as she reached over, but instead of pushing the door open, she slammed it shut and let her fingers linger over my shoulder. I cringed, pressing back against the seat as hard as I could, trying to avoid her touch. This was the worst that I'd felt in years. My head was humming, a sure sign I was dangerously close to losing control of it. If she had any thoughts about hugging me or stroking my arm or anything my mom would have done, my reaction was more than enough to convince her not to try. "Listen to me carefully," she said, and it didn't seem to matter to her that any moment a car or a PSF could come charging up the road. She waited until I was looking for her in the eye. "The most important thing you ever did was learn how to survive. Don't let anyone make you feel like you shouldn't have, like you deserve to be in that camp. You are important and you matter. You matter to me, you matter to the league, and you matter to the future." Her voice caught. "I will never hurt you, or yell at you, or let you go hungry. I will protect you for the rest of my life. I will never fully understand what you've been through, but I will always listen when you need to let something out. Do you understand?" Something warm bloomed in my chest, even as my breath hitched in my throat. I wanted to say something to that, to thank her, to ask her to repeat again, just to be sure that I hadn't misheard or misunderstood her. "I can't pretend like it never happened," I told her. I still felt the vibrations of the fence under my skin. "You shouldn't, and you should never forget. But a part of surviving is being able to move on. There's this word," she continued, turning to study her fingers gripping the wheel. "Nothing like it exists in the English language. In Portuguese, it's suade. Do you know that one?" I shook my head. "I don't know half the words in my own language. There's no perfect definition. It's more of an expression of a feeling, of terrible sadness. It's the feeling you get when you realize something you once lost is lost forever. And you can't ever get it back again." Kate took a deep breath. I thought of that word often at Thurmond, because the lives you had before, that we all had before, we can never get them back, but there's a beginning and an end. You know that? It's true that you can't reclaim what you had, but you can lock it up behind you. Start fresh. I did understand what she was saying, and I understood that her words were coming from a true, caring place. But after having my life broken down into rotations for so long, the thought of dividing it up even further was unimaginable. "Here," she said, reaching inside the collar of her shirt. She pulled a long silver chain up over her head. The last thing to reveal itself was this black circular pendant, a little bigger than the size of my thumb, hanging from it. I held out my hand, and she dropped the necklace into it. The chain was still warm from where it had kept against her skin, and I was surprised to find that the pendant wasn't anything more than plastic. "We call it a panic button," she said. "If you squeeze it for 20 seconds, it activates, and agents nearby will respond. I don't imagine you'll ever need to use it, but I'd like you to keep it. If you ever feel scared or if we get separated, I want you to press it." "It'll track me?" Something about that idea made me vaguely uncomfortable, but I slipped the chain on anyway. "Not unless you activate it," Kate promised. "We designed them that way so that the PSS wouldn't be able to accidentally pick up on a signal being transmitted from them. I promise. You're in control here, Ruby." I plucked the pendant up and held it between my thumb and my index finger. When I realized how dirty my fingers were and how much dirt was still packed underneath my nails, I dropped it. Me and nice things didn't go well together. "Can I ask you another question?" I waited until she had finally nudged the car back onto the road. And even then, it had taken me a few tries to get the words out. "If the Children's League was formed to end camps, why did you even bother getting me and Martin? Why didn't you just blow up the control tower while you were there?" Kate ran her hand over her lips. I'm not interested in those kinds of operations," she said. "I'd much rather be focused on the real issue, which is helping you kids. You can destroy a factory, but they'll just build another. But once you destroy a life, that's it. You never get that person back." "Do people have any idea?" I squeezed out. "Do people know that they're not reforming us at all?" "I'm not sure," Kate said. "Some will always live in denial about the camps, and they'll believe that what they want to believe about them. I think most people know there's something off, but they're in too deep with their own problems to call into question how the government is handling things like the camps. I think they want to trust that they are being treated well. Honestly, there are so few of you left now. I sat straight up again. What? This time Kate couldn't look at me. I didn't want to have to be the one to tell you this, but things are much worse now than they were before. The estimate the League put together said that 2% of the country's population of 10 to 17-year-olds were in reform camps. What about the rest? I said already, but I already knew the answer. The 98%. Most of them fell victim to Ian. They died, I corrected. All of the kids. Everywhere. No, not everywhere. There have been a few cases of it reported in other countries, but here in America, Kate took a deep breath. I don't know how much to tell you now because I don't want to overwhelm you, but it seems that the onset of Ian or psi powers is linked to puberty. How many? I really hadn't learned anything new in all of the years that I was trapped in Thurmond. How many of us are left? According to the government, there are approximately 250,000 children under the age of 18, but our estimate is closer to 1/10 of that. I was going to be sick. I buckled my seatbelt and leaned forward. Putting my head between my legs. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Kate's hand come down, as if she were going to rest it on my back, but I twisted away again. For a long time, the only sound between us was the tires turning against the old road. I kept my face down and my eyes shut long enough for Kate to worry. Are you still feeling queasy? We had to give you a high dosage of penicillin to induce seizure-like symptoms. Trust me, if we could have done it any other way, we would have. But we needed something serious enough for the PSS to actually bring you back to the infirmary. Martin snored behind us until eventually even that faded into the sound of the tires rolling down the road. My stomach twisted at the thought of asking exactly how many miles we were from Thurmond, how far away the past really was. I know, I said after a while. Thank you, I mean it. Kate reached over, and before I could think to stop her, her hand ran a smooth path from my shoulder down my arm. I felt something warm tickle at the back of my mind, and I recognized its warning trill. The first white-hot flash from her mind came and went so fast, I saw the scene like a photo negative. A young girl with white blonde hair in a high chair, her mouth frozen in a toothless grin. The next image stayed, lingered long enough for me to recognize what I was seeing. Fire. Everywhere. Climbing the walls of the room, burning with all of the intensity of the sun. This memory? It trembled, shuddered hard enough that I had to clench my teeth to stop from getting nauseated. Inside Kate's memory, a silver door with a 456B stamped over it, and black lettering slid into my view. A hand flashed out, reaching for the handle. Kate's pale, slender fingers outstretched, only to pull away from its molten hot touch. The hand lashed out against the wood, then a foot. The image wavered, curling at the edges as the door disappeared behind the dark smoke that spewed through the cracks and joints. The same dark door shut, and I jolted back, pulling my arm away from hers. What the hell? I thought, my heart racing in my ears. I squeezed my eyes shut. Still? Kate said. Oh, Ruby, I'm so sorry. When we switch cars, I'll make sure to ask for something to help ease your stomach. She, like all the others, was oblivious. You know, Kate said after a while, she kept her eyes on the dark road, to where it met the brightening sky. It was brave of you to take those pills and come with me. I know there was more to you than the quiet girl I met in the infirmary. I'm not brave. If I had been, I would have owned up to what I really was, no matter how terrible. I would have worked, eaten, and slept outside with the other oranges, or at least stepped out of the shadow of the yellows and reds. Those kids have been so proud of their powers. They made a point of harassing the camp controllers at every turn, hurting the PSFs, setting their cabins and washrooms on fire, trying to talk their way out of the gate, or driving the adults insane by putting images of murdered families or cheating wives in their head. It was impossible to miss them, to not step aside and turn away when they passed. I had let myself sit like a coward in the dull, endless stream of gray and green, never drawing attention, never once letting myself believe that I could or should escape. I think that all they had wanted us to find a way out and do it themselves. They had burned so bright and fought so hard to get free, but none of them had made it to 16. There are thousands of ways to tell someone if someone is lying to you. You don't need to be able to glimpse their mind to catch all of the little signs of insecurity and discomfort. More often than not, all you have to do is look at them. If they glance to the left while they're talking to you, if they add too many details to a story, if they answer a question with another question. My dad, a cop, taught me and 24 other kids in second grade when he gave his presentation on stranger danger. But Kate had no tells. She told me things about the world that didn't seem possible. Not until we were able to pick up a radio station and a solemn voice bled through the speakers to confirm it all. Yes, she cried, smacking her palm against the wheel. Finally! The president has reportedly refused an invitation for Britain's prime minister to discuss possible relief measures for the world economic crisis and how to pump life back into the sagging global stock markets. When asked to explain his decision, the president cited the United Kingdom's role in the UN's economic sanctions against the United States. Kate fiddled with the tuning again. The newscaster's voice faded in and out. But at the first burst of static, I jumped. 45 women were arrested in Austin, Texas yesterday for attempting to evade the birth registry. The women will be detained in a corrections facility until their children are born, after which the infants will be removed for the safety of their mothers and the state of Texas. The Attorney General has to say, another voice came through, this one deep and raspy. In accordance with New Order 15, President Gray has issued an arrest warrant for all persons involved with this dangerous activity. Gray? I said, glancing over to Kate. He's still the president? He had only just been elected when the first cases of Ian appeared, and I couldn't really remember anything about him, other than he had dark eyes and dark hair, and even that I only knew because the camp controllers had strung up pictures of his son Clancy all over camp as proof that we too could be reformed. I had a sudden sharp memory of the last time I had been in the infirmary, and the way his picture had seemed to watch me. She shook her head, visibly disgusted. He granted himself a term extension until the situation is, and I quote, resolved as to make sure that the United States is safe from telekinetic acts of terror and violence. He even suspended Congress. How did he manage that? I asked. With his so-called wartime powers, Kate said. Maybe a year or two after you were taken, some Psy kids nearly succeeded in blowing up the Capitol. Nearly? What does that mean? Kate glanced over again, studying my face. It means that they only succeeded in blowing up the Senate portion of it. President Gray's control of the government was only supposed to last until new congressional elections could be held. But then the riot started when the PSF started pulling kids from schools without their parents' permission. And then, of course, the economy tanked and the country defaulted on its debt. You'd be surprised how little voice you have when you lose everything. And everyone just let him? The thought turned my stomach. No, no one just let him. It's chaos out there right now, Ruby. Gray keeps trying to tighten his control, and every day more and more people are rioting, or breaking whatever laws we have left just to get food on the table. My dad was killed in a riot. Kate turned around to face the back seat so quickly that the car actually swerved into the other lane. I had known Martin was awake for the last 10 minutes. His breathing had become much lighter, and he stopped doing his weird lip licking and grunts. I just hadn't wanted to talk to him or to interrupt Kate. The people in our neighborhood robbed his store for food, and he couldn't even defend himself. How are you feeling? Sugar-coated Kate's words, almost as sweet as vanilla as air freshener, twirling around in front of us. Okay, I guess, he sat up, trying to pat his floppy brown hair into something presentable. Martin was round all over. His cheeks drooped, and his uniform shirt might have been a size too small, but he hadn't started growing like the other kids in his cabin. I had maybe an inch or two on him, and I was short with an average build. He couldn't have been more than a year younger than I was. I'm glad, Kate said. There's a water bottle back there for you if you need it. We'll be stopping in about an hour to switch cars again. Where are we going? We're meeting with a friend in Marlington, West Virginia. He'll have a change of clothes and identification papers for both of you. We're almost there now. I thought for sure Martin had dropped back off into sleep until he asked, Where are we going after that? The radio flashed to life, snatching up bits and pieces of Led Zeppelin before losing it again in static and silence. I could feel Martin's eyes burning holes into the back of my neck. I tried not to turn around and stare right back, but it was the closest I had been to a boy my age since we had been sorted. After years of living on opposite sides of the main trail in Thurmond, it was unnerving and suddenly be presented with all his little details. The freckles I hadn't noticed on his face, for instance, or the way his eyebrows seemed to merge into one. And what was I supposed to say to him? I'm so glad I found you. We're the last of us? One was the truth, and one couldn't be further from it. We're going to regroup with the League at their southern headquarters, and after we get there, you can decide if you want to stay, she said. I know you've been through a lot, so you don't have to make any choices now. Just know that you'll be safe if you stay with me. The feeling of freedom rose in me so fast that I had to chase it down to squash it along with my swelling heart. It was still too dangerous. There was a chance that the PSS could catch up to us, that I'd be back in camp or dead before we even got to Virginia. Martin watched me, his dark eyes narrowed. I watched as his pupils seemed to shrink, and I felt a tickle at the back of my mind, the ones that always came when I felt my abilities wanted to be let out and used. What the hell? My fingers dug into the armrest, but I didn't turn back to see if he was still at it. I glanced up to the rearview mirror only once, watching as he leaned back against the seat and crossed his arms over his chest with a huff. A sore at the corner of his mouth looked angry and red, like he had been scratching at the scab. I want to go where I can do what I couldn't do at Thurmond, Martin said finally. I didn't want to know what he meant by that. I'm a lot more powerful than you think, he continued. I won't need anyone else after you see what I can do. Or you won't need anyone else. Kate smiled. That's what I'm counting on. I knew you'd understand. What about you, Ruby? She said, turning to me. Are you willing to make a difference? If I said no, would she let me go? If I asked to go to my parents' house in Salem, would they take me there, no questions asked? To Virginia Beach? I wanted to see my grandmother. Out of the country, if that's what I really wanted? They were both looking at me, wearing mirrored looks of urgency and excitement. I wish I could have felt it. I wish I could have shared the security that they were feeling about their choice, but I wasn't absolutely certain about what I wanted. I only knew that what I didn't want. Take me anywhere, I said, anywhere but home. Martin picked at the sore with his grubby nails until blood appeared, and he licked it off his lips and the tips of his fingers, watching me like he expected me to ask for a taste. I turned back to Kate, the question dying on my lips, because for 1 second, just one, all I could think about was the sight of the fire and smoke rising in sharp lines off her shoulders, and the door that she couldn't open. We're going to stop there because I was going to call buses soon.